Our project is on universal basic income. And universal basic income is a non-means tested form of welfare, which would provide an income large enough to live on and would not include any phase out or other eligibility restrictions that other welfare ideas such as a negative income tax would include. So no matter how much money you make, you would be guaranteed this income, and no matter whether you were employed or unemployed, you would be guaranteed this income. This dates back to the 19th century, and early advocates proposed similar ideas, such as Juliet Rice Williams' minimum substance level transfers. Nobel laureates Milton Friedman and James Tobin also supported similar ideas, with Milton Friedman supporting a negative income tax and James Tobin proposing an income guarantee. And all these ideas come together to form a universal basic income. Recently, it's gathered increased support due to fears of rising automation and wealth inequality in the United States, as technology exponentially is getting better and better with increases in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so the goals of a UBI, one is to replace the existing welfare programs and reduce government bureaucracy. This draws support from the right-wing politicians who are a fan of simple welfare states and reducing bureaucracy to reduce administrative costs. And on the left side, the universalism and unconditionality are popular for increasing the bargaining power of workers. Additionally, a UBI would provide income redistribution, which, as automation substitutes more and more labor, there are concerns that this production surplus will start increasingly going to the owners of capital, and this will fuel increasing inequality. This is important because median money income in the United States increased by less than 1% from 2000 to 2016, and job opportunities have decreased since 2000 as employment growth slowed down. Particularly low-income workers are at risk of this. With the current welfare system having multiple income-based programs on top of each other, you can have issues where your implicit marginal tax rate will exceed 100%. So on this graph, you can see that as your earned income increases up to about $40,000 for a Virginia family of 3, you can see that their income minus taxes plus subsidies can actually decrease as they work more and they lose access to welfare programs. And so in this range, there is very little incentive, or actually disincentive, to work more and better your situation. And so many people will rely on welfare instead of improving their condition. Because a UBI is not income-based, it avoids this issue, and workers would always be encouraged to work more and have incentive because they would make more. Additionally, having this kind of safety net would reduce unemployment anxiety and make it easier for people to find a job that they actually would fit better in, instead of quickly finding a job so they can maintain their benefits. And for current implementation, a UBI, as described before, is not currently implemented anywhere. There are ongoing pilot studies, but none of them have finished. So most of the knowledge of the effects of a UBI come from trials on similar aspects. So, for example, a study on universal but not basic income comes from Eastern Cherokee immigrants, and payments around $4,000 per person per year from casino revenue were given out to Cherokee adults, and this did not depend on their employment status, their income, or if they resided on a reservation. What they found were these payments had positive impacts on children's educational attainment, and it reduced criminal arrests. Additionally, it increased children's emotional and behavioral health. In the United States and in Canada, there were negative income tax experiments in the 60s and 70s, and these were not randomized control samples, so they don't tell us as much. They did give out cash as welfare, but all of the cash given out was phased out as they made more, so it does not apply for UBI. However, what it found out that giving cash was that mental health hospitalizations went down, graduations went up, and birth rates below 25 decreased. It additionally brought most recipients above the Canada's poverty line. And for ongoing pilot studies that actually incorporate a more traditional UBI, there is the Y Combinator, which is a Silicon Valley funded study, which would give $1,000 per month for 3 to 5 years for individuals. However, to qualify, their income must still be below the median income of the United States, and recipients can still claim welfare. So results from this may not show what a true UBI would do, as likely there wouldn't be as much welfare under such a system, and it could apply to people above and below the median income. In Finland, there was a much larger study that provided universal income. However, it restricted the max income an individual could receive at what their original income was previous. So many recipients still had to go through the welfare system. However, they did report increased health outcomes. And in Ontario, there was a universal study that replaced the welfare, but the cash granted was phased out. So most of the results were viewed as a negative income tax. And these pilot studies will add knowledge on the short-term effects of a UBI, like short-run income equality, elasticity on labor supply. However, similar to previous experiments, they really contain little information on long-run effects.
In this section, I will be evaluating the implementation of universal basic income on labor supply in the market. Generally, welfare benefits reduce an individual's incentive to work and therefore reduces the labor supply. This is particularly true when the utility generated by the benefits of a welfare program are greater than the utility one receives from working and receiving a wage through participation in the labor market. Individuals would want to reduce hours worked in order to enjoy their welfare benefits by participating in leisure. We assume that people value leisure as a normal good, meaning that as income increases and one is better off, that they want to consume more and more leisure. Implementing universal basic income when leisure is a normal good results in individuals having higher incomes, which is represented on the graph by a movement from E sub 0 to E sub 1. Therefore, they will also have higher utility curves, which is shown on the graph as a movement from U sub 0 to U sub 1. Consumption of goods will naturally increase, which is represented on the graph by a movement from F sub 0 to F sub 1. Hours of leisure will increase, and on that graph it's shown from 70 to 80, or from P sub 0 to P sub 1, and inherently hours worked will decrease. Under this model, work is considered as something rather unpleasant but necessary to provide a certain level of consumption, whereas leisure is considered something desirable. However, societal values regarding labor can incentivize us to prefer labor over leisure hours for jobs with high intrinsic motivation. These preferences for labor can cause an individual to stay at the same level of hours worked or even increase labor hours if they have high preferences for labor due to societal factors regardless of the introduction of a universal basic income. Under other welfare programs, after a certain level of income is earned, workers can lose benefits. This results in an unemployment trap, where low-income workers reduce their labor supply in order not to pass the threshold for income where they will lose benefits. An unconditional universal basic income has the potential to increase hours of labor for low-income workers once this threat of the unemployment trap is removed. In conclusion, when a country provides a universal basic income, we can assume that there will be an overall reduction in labor supply. However, for low-income workers, there may be a greater incentive to supply labor with universal basic income compared to the current welfare state.
Arguments for universal basic income. Our current welfare systems in the United States take effect when someone has already lost their home or lost their job or has already hit rock bottom, whereas universal basic income helps prevent these situations. And if you can help prevent these situations, you can reduce the load on the welfare state overall. Universal basic income could also reduce poverty and income inequality. We don't know for sure, but if you give people who have the least money in the economy more money, then you could reduce the income gap. Universal basic income could also improve mental health because people would be less worried about if they lose their job, are they going to be able to feed their kids? Are they going to be able to pay rent? Well, with universal basic income, they likely would still be able to pay those things. So if you can improve mental health, it's also very likely you could reduce violent crime. Universal basic income also acts as a security net for those who would be affected by technological advancements, truck drivers, for instance. Universal basic income provides income to non-working parents and caregivers. And I think this is a particularly important one because, say, a woman is stuck in an abusive relationship with a man, but she doesn't have a job, so she doesn't have her own income. She's going to feel like maybe she can't leave her husband who's abusing her. But if she has universal basic income, she knows that if she leaves him, she can at least pay rent. She can at least buy herself food. She can take care of herself to some extent. And that would give people who are not in a position to earn money in today's economy a great deal more agency. Workers would also have more bargaining power because they have an extra security. This could potentially raise wages for workers. Now, arguments against, just pure feasibility. Universal basic income would be very expensive. Just in the United States, if you gave everyone $1,000 a month for a year, it would add up to about $3 trillion. That number varies whether you include children, seniors, and all that, but it would be very expensive. It could potentially disincentivize work. You could see labor supply decrease and output decrease. You kind of saw this during COVID-19 when unemployment benefits were boosted. Several employers were having trouble getting their employees to come back because they make more through unemployment. Inflation, if you give everyone the same amount of money in the economy, prices are going to rise. McDonald's burgers won't be $4 or $5 anymore. They're going to be $8 or $9. And that basically nullifies the universal basic income. Targeting is also an issue because universal basic income is universal. That means everyone gets it. And if everyone gets it, that means that the people who need it the most are not being prioritized. And as I said before, the cost for universal basic income is very high, which means that you would likely need to cut other programs in order to do universal basic income. And it's very possible that some people get more value out of the current social welfare programs than they would out of universal basic income. So that is also an important concern.
Universal basic income achieves the goal of replacing the current welfare system and reducing bureaucracy due to the fact that universal basic income is a kind of one-stop shop. Every citizen gets the same amount of income every month. There is no need for paperwork verifying income levels, need for, let's say, food stamps or insurance. It also reduces the poverty trap from these welfare systems, as there's no verification of how much money or how many hours you are working to receive such benefits. In the Finnish experiment, it showed that universal basic income actually did not disincentivize work. The amount of average working days was around the same between the experiment group receiving universal basic income and the control group using the current Finnish welfare system. The only thing that really did change between the two groups was that the basic income group reported significantly less stress and better health than the control group. This is a great benefit not only just for individual health and stress, but if we were thinking of it as a monetary value, if these people were on, let's say, government assistance for health insurance, it's a lower cost per person, along with the fact that if they're less stressed, they're probably more likely to produce more in the long run. So not only is it great for the people involved, but it is also great for those providing healthcare, reducing those costs, and just better health and happiness in general, and better productivity for the firms.